everybody should be somewhat cautious about the chances for radically reforming government workers and the government program, precisely because it's still always going to be government. There's never going to be a world where government and government workers are going to be motivated by, the same incentive structure, the same sort of competition that people in the private sector are motivated by, and that helps the private sector outcompete the government whenever they're set head to head. I mean, but there are a lot of things they can do, and Clinton was alluding to those things in the 1990s. Yes, his reinventing government initiative was part and parcel of this reform that was happening in the states that were looking at reforming civil service. Now, Philip Howard, who wrote The Death of Common Sense, who is also very much in this kind of new Democrat reformist mindset, was also one of the inspirations for Georgia reforming its civil service. The governor there, again, Governor Zell Miller, said he read Howard's book, The Death of Common Sense, and said, "Oh, wait, this is the problem. We need to blow up this civil service system," and he did. So there are these ways to push it, and actually, on the margins at least, make it more efficient. Allow managers to remove people that are bad, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, this has happened now in several states. I wouldn't put an exact number on it, but you've had reforms to the removal process, the discipline process. You've had reforms to hiring. Historically, you had a very stodgy system where basically people sat in a room and they took a civil service test. And, it didn't really matter if you were a custodian or if you were a doctor. You took these little civil service tests and you got slotted into your job, and they weren't very appropriate for the job you were doing. Now, there certainly would be some room for a new civil service test or types of civil service tests in the federal government that unfortunately were basically ended due to lawsuits about racial disparities in the early 1980s. And I think there's some options that should be taken to bring these tests back. But what we shouldn't do, which I think unfortunately some conservatives are advocating for, is return to that testing system, because that's precisely what these reform states also got away from. In the private sector, if you want a job, you don't all sit in a room and take a test with a formal score, and the top 3 people with the best scores in the civil service test, they get hired, and the person with number 4 doesn't get hired. That's not where we want to go back to. The positive thing that's happened to some extent in the federal government, most especially in the states, is allow managers discretion about who to hire, which is in Texas, by one report, you could have a manager who talks to someone at a coffee shop and says, "Hey, wait, you're exactly who I'm looking for. Would you want to work for me at the Department of Transportation and help build a highway?" And the person could say, "Yeah." And you can hire them just like in a private sector job. The federal government, even though they don't have the same stodgy tests, still has a much too formalized process. David Shulkin, who was a healthcare executive who worked in the Veterans Administration under both Obama and Trump in the first term, talked about how hard it was, where he would try to hire other healthcare executives who he knew were top in the field to run the Veterans Administration or Veterans Affairs health care system. And he would give them into the hiring system, and they would compete against a bunch of people who had no healthcare experience, who didn't know about hospitals. And for whatever reason, the human resource professionals in the federal government would rate these other guys who worked at, say, the Federal Aviation Administration tops, in this best in country healthcare executive wouldn't even get to the top of these lists. And Shulkin was pulling his hair out saying, "This is insane. I know this guy is one of the best healthcare executives in the country, and I can't recruit him because he has to go through this formal hiring process."
If you like this video, check out the full interview. Also, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you get notified every time a new video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.